Sawadee Carp, hello and welcome to another Victor Black Masterclass video. In today's video, we're going to be looking at why is it that TRT users, medically supervised, medically prescribed TRT users, are not allowed to compete in natural physique competitions. It's a question that I get asked every few months. Someone who's on TRT basically goes, well, I don't understand, I'm on effectively replacement levels of these drugs. I'm not realizing a performance advantage from using them. Why am I not allowed to compete in natural competition? So let me just basically explain. There's a very valid, very fair, and very reasonable explanation behind this. So let me just quickly walk you through why that is. So 2019, there's a lot of natural bodybuilding federations. So what I'm about to say applies to most of them. There may well be an exception with a few smaller federations, but most natural bodybuilding federations today have a policy that basically says testosterone in any form, including injections, patches, gels, for any reason at all, even if it's physician prescribed, is not allowed in natural competition. There are no exceptions to that rule, and that is quite rightly so. So it should be. Okay, you should not be allowed to enter natural competition if you're using testosterone replacement therapy, and let me explain to you why. This is a case study that came out in 2013. Now, let me just explain for people that don't know what a case study is. It's looking at an individual. So we can't place too much weight in a case study because it is an individual, but I'm going to explain to you after this. This is really a data that I'm presenting because it's very insightful and very valuable, and then we can extend this into a general recommendation for most people. This is a case study that looked at an elite, natural, professional bodybuilder getting ready for a competition and the impact on a number of parameters, including hormonal profile over that period. So, just so to explain this, because it's not immediately obvious, this time point 0 here, what this basically is this is show day, right? And so they track this individual's parameters, it's a body composition, hormonal profile, and that's for 6 months in and 6 months out of the show, leading in 6 months, leading out 6 months. And this is what was registered in terms of hormonal profiling change over that time frame. So let's start with the big one, testosterone, all right? Basically, literally within a couple of weeks started to decline to the point whereby they reached a low some 3 months in that was significant here, right? This is a big hit. We're talking about like 60-70% reduction in serum levels of testosterone from extended calorie restriction. That's a big hit. So here's my point. It's pretty straightforward. If this individual was to artificially introduce testosterone and do nothing more than raise himself back to baseline here, no performance advantage, none, right? No super physiological dosing here, just back to baseline. Would he have an unfair advantage over his competition? Absolutely, 100%, unequivocally, yes. Yes, 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 right? So if you're on a prescription for testosterone and you're creating an artificial level of testosterone, you don't have to deal with this, all right? That's the reason you're banned, right? That process, this is natural. You're going to see a hit on testosterone following extended calorie restriction, you just are. And if you're on TRT, you're not. So there is a performance advantage. Now, what's really interesting about this conversation is if you want to pull that thread a bit harder, you can see there's also a hit on other hormones. Let's look at T3, T4. So both the thyroid hormones T3 and T4 are also impacted in a negative downward trend towards show day following calorie restriction. Right? Does that hurt us as a natural? Absolutely. It impacts on how we perform. Okay, in terms of the human metabolism is regulated by these hormones. Right? You see the changes in the hunger hormone ghrelin and leptin. These are hormones that basically are negatively impacted by the process of competition preparation. Any and all artificial means of elevating these hormones is questionable. And here's the most controversial part. Not just with testosterone replacement therapy. I posted a little while ago my current cycle, and people saw that I use T3, I use T4. Why do I use these drugs? To offset this exact effect, right? So as an enhanced athlete, I take supplemental T3, I take supplemental T4 to offset the reduction in natural production in this process of competition preparation. Does that give me an advantage over natural athletes? Absolutely, 100% it does. You know, anyone that says it does is delusional. So, what if you're on thyroid medication? Interesting dilemma here, right? What about if you're a diabetic? What happens to insulin? I take insulin. You know why I take insulin? Because it works, right? It helps me to better control my blood glucose levels at this difficult point, okay? So I'm using testosterone artificially. I'm using thyroid artificially. I'm using insulin in an artificial way. Why? Because they work. So if you're on medically prescribed levels of these things, technically you're not natural. Technically you have an advantage over your competition. Now, right now, to the best of my understanding, because it's been a while since I competed as a natural, testosterone is the only of these subsets that they kind of control. Why? Because it has the biggest impact. Okay, so I don't believe that T3, T4 is controlled for those who have a prescription. I don't believe insulin is controlled for those who have a prescription. I believe these are acceptable. But I'm telling you, there's advantage to be had there because that's why I use them. All right, I don't use large amounts of insulin. My current insulin usage is 12 international units of Lantus a day. That's not super physiological, and there's a reason I do it. Advantage. Okay, so as I said, if you're a TRT user and you're wondering, well, why aren't I allowed to compete as a natural? You have an unfair advantage over true naturals in this domain in competition. Okay, you do in physique competition. Okay, I just want to show you a couple of other slides. This is the same data from the same individual, numerically represented this time. Now, around the world, we use different units to quote, serum levels of hormones and things like that. So let's just stick with the concept rather than confuse everyone. Just say units here, right? So you can see 6 months out from the show, this individual had 9.2 units of total testosterone. 3 months in, it was down to 2.2. So from 9.2 to 2.2 in 3 months, 12 weeks of dieting. That's a big hit. That's a big hit. Insulin, we went from 6 units to 2.2. T3, we went from 1.34 units to 0.7 to 0.6 at show day. You can see there's a significant downward trend on all of these hormones that play an impact on body composition here. Okay, I, as an enhanced athlete, modulate and I manipulate each one of these hormones. Why? Because it provides me with a performance advantage. I wouldn't do it otherwise. Okay, so just be aware, there is a very valid and very fair reason that you are not allowed to compete as a natural. Now, the logical extension of this conversation, I'll just show you this. This is a very nice young man. His name, let me get rid of this thing here so you can see. Where's my... Okay, this is a nice young guy called Chris Elkins. Chris posted this on his Instagram profile a little while ago. It basically was his blood work pre-contest, and you can see, guess what? He's taken a very significant hit here. So he's at 43 nanograms per deciliter total testosterone. Healthy young man, is not hypergonadal. This is a consequence of natural bodybuilding competition. 43 nanograms per deciliter, okay? And T3, you can see there's a hit on T3 here, okay? So let's just say you're the guy walking around with 43 nanograms per deciliter, right, in your daily life, you're hypergonadal. You're going to be, and quite rightly so, complaining about your quality of life. Absolutely true. That's going to make it very difficult with body composition goals, etc., etc. So your doctor is likely to raise you up from 43 units, right, to probably somewhere between, let's just arbitrarily say 500 to 700 nanograms per deciliter. That's a reasonable range. Most doctors are happy to have you there. So you went from 43 to 500 to 700. You don't think that there's competitive advantage to be had in there? You think that's fair, that these two guys should compete against each other? It's not in any way fair at all, period, right? This is why, as I said, TRT is banned from natural competition, and so it should be. Okay, so the obvious question here, all right, for people who don't compete is, so how does this relate to the real world? It's important to understand that even if you're just dieting, for physique development goals, not competition, personal, I'm going to lose weight, 2 to 3 weeks of weight loss can significantly reduce testosterone levels by as much as 63%. This is in evidence in non-competitors, all right? This is not a surprise, right? And this is not speculation. This is in evidence, right? So understand, you might not think of yourself as a performance using drug athlete, right? You might be going, well, hang on a sec, it's just TRT. But, right, if you diet and you diet for 2 to 3 weeks on a fairly, strong calorie restriction as we do, right, you're not subject to this decline. You're artificially introducing your testosterone levels. You're artificially controlling them. So, you have to understand that you even have advantage as a TRT user over a natural man when it comes to body recomposition. You just do, right? You might not want to admit it, Jerry, but it's very difficult to basically argue otherwise. Here's a study that was basically done again, this time we are not talking about athletes here. We're not talking about, super low body fat levels, all right? This is a consequence of 2 to 3 weeks of testosterone 2 to 3 weeks of caloric restriction, and the magnitude of change in testosterone level was 63% in this study. 63%. So, Mr. TRT user, are you really natural? Not really. Not really. There's nothing wrong with that. I am probably no one in the world is more outspoken about the benefits of enhancement for older men, right? I am very, very pro this. But you also have to be fair, and you have to be open-minded and say, look, I actually do get advantage off of this, when normal people are realizing a reduction in testosterone levels of the magnitude of 60%, right, from caloric restriction for 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not impacted by that. I artificially control my testosterone levels. And does that help with body composition? You better believe it does. So that's it for today's video. Hopefully that explains things. There's a valid, viable reason that testosterone replacement therapy is not allowed in natural physique competitions. I fully support that. That should not be the case. It's challenging. I understand that, because when you are on TRT, then you kind of fit in no man's land. You don't belong in the world of the natural bodybuilder, and you don't really belong in the world of the untested enhanced bodybuilder, because you're not realizing super physiological outcomes like I am, but you're not truly natural either. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and I look forward to seeing you at the next Victor Black Masterclass. Sawadee Ka.